This episode of the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour is sponsored by the law offices of Alfred Guillaume III, a boutique criminal defense firm located in Washington, D.C. The firm specializes in defending federal criminal cases. You can learn more about the firm by visiting our website at guillaumelaw.com. That's GUILLAUME law.com. Attorney David Clunie is an equity partner at the financial services firm Edward Jones. He's the former executive director of the Black Economic Alliance and has worked in the Obama White House and Department of Treasury. Dave grew up in New York City during hip-hop's golden era. Not only is he from New York, but he's from the birthplace of hip-hop, the Boogie Down Bronx. I always enjoy talking to someone who knows and loves hip-hop just as much as I do. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. This episode is for my true hip-hop heads. Let's go. Let me just go ahead and say, for those people who don't know who are listening, I'm from New Orleans, but my soul is in New York.
Love New Orleans, but yes.
My soul is in New York, and musically, specifically, it's really in New York. So obviously, I love hip hop, which is why I started this podcast. Mm-hmm. You are I don't even have to ask you, but I think I always ask the guest, are you a fan of hip hop? Yes. Okay, so let's start talking. All right. We have a tradition here, which you participated in, where we have a stack of records, and you chose those records which caught your eye for whatever reason. And I just want to kind of talk to you about some of that. And on social media, we post some of the albums the pictures of the albums that you picked and selected. But I'll just say, for those people who are not looking at a camera or looking at the video of this right now, you picked 4 records. You picked Camp Lo, Uptown Saturday Night, the first Camp Lo album. You picked the first Brand Nubian album. You picked Raekwon the Chef, Only Built for Cuban Linx, which is, in my opinion, the best solo Wu-Tang album.
I would agree.
And you picked Midnight Marauders by Tribe Called Quest.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just say, before you say anything, I just need to say that my 2 favorite duos of all time, or not duos, but groups of all time, are Wu-Tang and Tribe. Outkast
That's why we friends.
Right, that's why we're friends. Outkast is probably 3rd. I don't know if they're in your top 3.
They're not in my top 3, but I have a ton of respect for Outkast. And Andre 3000 is in my top 10 of MCs, which is also controversial sometimes.
Right,
but,
it's really not that controversial because, let's talk about that. Before, I'm going to get off topic for the second, and this is a hard question, and the people, but you're not a hip hop novice,
right?
So, give me your top 4, which is your Mount Rushmore.
Ooh, 4. I usually get 5, but all right, 4.
Mount Rushmore, your top 4.
Notorious B.I.G.
Not including a group. No groups included, just solo.
Right. Notorious B.I.G., Nas, Jay-Z. Ooh, this is hard now. I gotta go to 4. Rakim.
Okay, that's a very traditional list.
It is.
And
I know
what's wrong with it. It's a very traditional list, but that's all good because I struggle. My list changes all the time.
I told you, it gets a little more, controversial and unorthodox in the top 10. Like, you got Jadakiss in there. You got
interesting.
Jadakiss, who cemented his place and moved his way up there in the 2021 verses.
Right, correct, yes.
Because he just put up a world-class performance, made me go back through his entire catalog, and I just have a different appreciation for this dude. But Common is in there as well. So it's not as traditional as the top 4.
Right. And we talked off camera about a very, in my opinion, controversial statement. I think you would agree, from a friend of yours, Flacco.
Yes, sir. Shout to my boy, Fernando Luciano.
Flacco says that Nas, it was written, is superior to Nas Illmatic. That's just silly.
I disagree with that. Right? I vehemently disagree, but Flacco, that is his position. I respect. He's Queens Village cat, grew up. Like, he knows hip hop very well. So I respect his opinion.
Spoke to him.
I just respectfully disagree on this particular point.
Lunacy.
And this came out of, we went to a Nas concert together in February at Madison Square Garden, and it just started a conversation about his best music and his catalog and all that. So that's what
I think it's his second best album, but it's not the first. I mean,
I actually rock with him. Like, I listened to it over and over a number of times. I was like, this dude's bugging.
Right. It's a really good album. It's a great album. Yeah. But okay, anyway, going back to these records that you chose, can you just kind of tell us why you chose these particular? Because you had a lot of records in there. You chose these 4.
Yeah, man. These all speak to me in a very personal way. I mean, these were press play albums for me at pivotal points in my life. High school, well, middle school, in I guess the Brand Nubian context. One for All, Midnight Marauders, Only Built for Cuban Linx, and Camp Lo. All high school for me, but also like I am. Brand Nubian is among the many artists who come out of Westchester and are not, I think, recognized enough, like Pete Rock and CL Smooth, the Lox, DMX, Mary J, even though she's not hip hop, Heavy D and the Boys, etc. But they spoke to me in a different way, and they, I feel like, laid the groundwork for so much more hip hop to come behind them and didn't get a lot of the recognition. Tribe Called Quest represents.
Now we have all the albums in there. You chose that one. We have every Tribe album.
But Midnight Marauders in particular for me was like I just had it on loop and played it over. Even like the interludes, they just were like such a part of my upbringing. And what Tribe Called Quest represents, particularly this album, is kind of the center and nucleus of what we think of as conscious rap. And it was at a time where there was this friction between gangster rap, conscious rap, pro-black, all that. And like you look at, they were part of the native tongues,
right?
Alongside folks like
De La Soul,
New School,
Queen
De La
Latifah,
Soul, exactly.
Shout out
You got
Native
some
Tongues,
of them on
Black
this
Sheep,
album cover represented.
Jungle Brothers.
Exactly. So, that to me is hip hop, and they represent the essence of hip hop. And,
oh yeah. They do.
And that's why I chose this album. And you have, a lot of them represented in the pictures on the album.
Great album art too, by the way.
Great album art.
That's probably my favorite album cover. But for me, it's Midnight Marauders and Low End Theory. I go back and forth between the two.
Low End Theory is phenomenal.
But I would agree with everything you said.
And then Camp Lo, Uptown Saturday Night. You couldn't tell my best friend Dwayne in high school and growing up and me that we were not Sonny Chiba and Geechee Suede, that we were not Camp Lo. We just that is a press play album. So much soul, so much,
I mean, look at that cover, man. It's probably the best. It might be my most favorite cover in hip hop history.
It is.
It's taken from the Marvin Gaye cover.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of the name of the album right now, but it's directly inspired by that, if not the exact same cover. And it's amazing album.
Yeah, man. These guys. Just, and Camp Lo's another group that I feel like they had this album, they had a stint, but not a lot of people.
Right, they had their moment, and it was such a moment. And I, my friend from New Orleans, Jonathan, we call him J. Rue the Damager. He had older brother, and a neighbor that were a little bit older than us, and they put him and me on this album. I would not have known about this album because, at that time in New Orleans, I mean, I think this album is what, 94, 95?
No, this is more like 97-ish.
Is it that old?
Yeah, it's like 96, 97.
Because it wouldn't have gotten a lot of play.
That's right.
Where I was living at the time. I mean, even Biggie was more mainstream. Nas is even more mainstream. But Camp Lo is like really New York. I mean, that is like New York City.
And that was at a time where music was much more regional. Like you could tell where somebody was from by listening to the album. And to your point, you probably wouldn't have heard it outside of that region as much. We didn't have streaming. We didn't even have
streaming.
Napster and all that at the time.
Internet.
Yes. Old.
I mean, the
internet was there. It was like dial-up early times where we weren't really sharing. We weren't sharing files or music on the internet yet.
That was shared. These
guys
might
had a word processor at home.
Right. I mean, Camp Lo did not get a lot of video play, as I recall. Like it wasn't on. They weren't on MTV or anything. So how would I know about Camp Lo?
Yeah,
I found them, and thank God I did. I mean, I was a bit of an exception to the rule where I was from. I was really into hip hop. I really like New York hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
I still do. That's to me, that is hip hop. That's from the Bronx, and that's where everything comes from there.
That's right.
But yeah, that's a great choice.
Yeah, that's the other reason I chose Brand Nubian and Camp Lo. Both represent me, Westchester, Bronx, and like just the album spoke to me so much. And then Only Built for Cuban Linx.
My freshman year of college. It's a great album.
I think the best Wu-Tang album, single or group. I love Wu as a group.
That's probably accurate. I mean,
it's just such a solid album, and the combination of Raekwon and Ghost, Ghostface Killer, Raekwon, Tony Stuggs.
What's your favorite song on that album?
Verbal Intercourse.
With Nas. Right, yeah. Mine, I think, is probably between that and Incarcerated Scarface.
Incarcerated Scarface is phenomenal. I mean, it's hard to choose the favorite.
Yeah.
I love All My Children equally. It's
Right.
like I love every song on the album, but I also remember two things. One, the Purple cassette tape. Remember that?
I didn't have the cassette. I had the CD at the time.
So there was a Purple cassette tape that came out.
I was living in New York. See, New
York
was
man,
always on some different stuff.
And it just was so different. Like nobody was up on that. But there was also a kid on my football team who used to bump. He had a car with a crazy loud system, and he used to bump one of these songs. Oh God, what was it? I gotta look on the back now. Every single day coming down to practice. Knuckleheads. It was Knuckleheads. Yeah. Just the bass was crazy. His chunk, boom, boom, boom.
I think that's what. I think I remember that song.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, it just takes me back. You know, you hear a song and it like takes you back to a moment in time.
Oh yeah.
That song every time takes me back there. But yeah, man, it's all these albums represent me, what I love, and I just think some of the best that hip hop has ever put out.
Right. I mean, we were so fortunate to grow up when we did.
Yes, we were.
And
very
grow
fortunate
up in that era. And we sound like old guys saying it now.
Because we are.
Right. I mean, I'm not the get off my lawn guy, but I am. When it comes to this music stuff, I try those, especially since I'm doing this podcast, to listen to what's out now and to try to appreciate it. And there are artists that I do appreciate. I always reference Kendrick. Shout out Kendrick Lamar. Shout out J. Cole.
Absolutely.
Those are my two guys of this generation.
Yeah.
And Drake, he's a controversial figure. He can be polarizing, but you can't deny what the brother has, the success he's had.
That's right. He makes you dance. He's
Right.
kind of like the New Age Diddy a little bit.
He's like the New Age Diddy. And my partner who's here off camera kind of compared him to Lauryn Hill because he sings and he raps.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
I hadn't thought about it either. And you may not know this, but my number one of all time is Lauryn Hill. Rapper, just generally.
Interesting.
But yes.
She is phenomenal. She's a phenomenal talent. She's
and I know that's controversial.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that because I call myself out here. I put her among my top women rappers and artists.
How dare you?
But she has not made it in
How
my top 10.
How dare you separate her?
But no, I mean that's a lot of people's top. I was looking the other day at Funkmaster Flex. Shout Northeast BX and shout out to Flex. Drop a bomb on it.
We'll go back and add a bomb on this stuff when we edit.
He had his top 50 list, and women didn't make it in until like the 40s or something like that for MCs. And maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. It might have been in 20s, whatever it is. It's like
he's a chauvinist. Yeah.
But I think the industry has been pretty chauvinistic.
Absolutely.
And a lot of women who have gotten on, Lil' Kim, Trina,
right?
Foxy Brown. All these women have had to be like hypersexual,
right?
In order to
that's
get
something that
attention from record labels and otherwise. And that's something that I think
unfortunately women have to go through, just not in this industry, but in all industries.
And Lauryn Hill really bucked that trend because she was
did.
much more about the substance, about the lyrical content, about the flow, about.
Can I just tell you that this woman is so substantive? There's like no one in the history of hip hop that's more substance than she has. Now she's got a short career. I understand. All the people that say, well, the first Fugees album was garbage, but you just take.
The Score?
Not the Score.
Oh, the one before. I was like, okay, yeah.
So
I think of The Score as the first
right, that's
one.
What most people think of it. But if you take The Score and her only album, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, I think those albums can rival almost any album in history.
Instant classics, both of them. Absolutely.
I mean, I remember it was 96 when The Score came out. I was in college. I listened to that thing 1,000 times a day
because it was phenomenal.
It was like it was soulful, it was thoughtful, and she obviously carried the Fugees, but just the whole vibe was just amazing. And then in 98, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, 98, 99 when that came out. Mm-hmm. If you go back and listen to that now, listen to what from beginning to end, and from what she's saying and how soulful that is, and what the words that come out of her mouth are. I don't know.
So for her to be that introspective at that age, it's crazy.
Lauryn Hill, man.
I will throw out a name just not to be controversial, but to make people think, to be provocative. Bahamadia.
I was never a Bahamadia fan, but I know why you say that. I don't dislike her.
Her flow was phenomenal. The song "I Confess," one of my favorite songs of all time. She's somebody who people just don't know, and that's how I say her name intentionally on this podcast so that people will look up that song, I Confess, but just like some of her music. And she was so soulful, so just confident with her flow. And again, was in the Lauryn Hill kind of likeness of not being hypersexual, but being about the substance and about, the music.
But even when you talk about like hypersexuality, Little Kim was probably the first person to do that.
I mean, Trina. Yeah, Trina out there. Dina Howard, she was a singer.
But Dina Howard doesn't really say anything.
Fair enough.
Kim actually has a lot of talent. That first album,
absolutely.
The first song on the album is with Jay-Z. I don't want to repeat the lyrics. This is somewhat of a family podcast, but I used to. No, I'm not gonna say it. Right. But go ahead and listen to that album.
I know what you're talking about.
But she came out the gate with it was like, wow. But her voice, her inflection, her accent, for lack of a better term, was just in your face. It was New York. It was like, what? And she's small, she's like a tiny person.
Small in stature, but big in presence.
And like, wow.
And she was trained by one of the best to ever do it, by arguably the best, Notorious B.I.G. And essentially it was to use, what she has and that Brooklyn flow and that swag.
Brooklyn flow was just nasty.
Yeah.
Nasty.
And she was nice with it. Yeah. And, so there's no denying that. And you wonder, I think you wonder what it would have been without the misogyny in the industry and if she were able to kind of have an equal chance But it is what it is, and I appreciate her for the role she's played. She paved the way for a lot. We wouldn't have Nicki Minaj.
I mean, that's the number one
Cardi
comparison,
B,
right?
And all these
those two
now,
in particular, Nicki
Megan
Minaj and Cardi B,
and
Megan Thee Stallion, right? Without Kim, there's none of those.
That's right.
Those artists, and those artists are great in their own right.
Right.
Not of my generation, but it doesn't matter because Kim set the standard and laid the foundation. Even Foxy Brown had her place. But she wasn't Kim. And I remember the debate at the time, who do you like better?
I remember that.
Yeah. Kim.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer now.
Yeah, Kim. She was, and unfortunately, after Big passed, and, she never really equaled the success of that first album.
Right.
But the hardcore album,
that's a legit album.
That is a legit album. She had Jay-Z on there. She had Big on there. And she carried her own.
That's right.
I mean, that was
they wanted to be featured on her joint.
96 was that year. That's a whole nother conversation for hip hop.
Oh man.
So many
the
albums.
Golden era of hip hop. I'd say 93 to 98.
Right.
Oh man.
96 in particular. You had the Outkast, AT-Aliens, their sophomore album, which was amazing. You have I think you have the Ghostface first, the Iron Man.
That was either 95 or 96. I forget.
Right. And you had Raekwon. I mean, Raekwon's 95.
Yep.
But 96, you had so many albums. Yep. And even in New Orleans, we had the Jizza, I want to say, come out in 96.
I was going to say, I would argue 94 might be the best year. It was 94,
Illmatic. Right?
Midnight Marauders, Illmatic, Reasonable Doubt.
Reasonable Doubt's 96, my man.
That's 96?
96.
No.
Yes. Let's Google it.
Yes, please. Because
I'm pretty sure that Reasonable Doubt is 96. Okay.
The Main Ingredient, Pete Rock and CL Smooth, one of my favorite albums of all time, a press play. But those years, you're absolutely right. 94, 95, 96. And for me, a New Yorker, I remember.
Reasonable Doubt, everybody.
I stand corrected. Slap myself on the hand.
Right. You should know better. Shame on you.
I remember there was a period in New York City where you would go to a party and hear Bad Boy for 2 hours. Wow. And it was total 112, Junior Mafia, Biggie,
and we were
Diddy.
In college at the time in New Orleans.
Man,
it was the same.
Man,
it was absolutely the same.
It was a time, and they made songs for you to party to.
Right, it was an amazing time, and I remember those parties, and it was just
every joint was a total banger. Man.
Yeah,
but it's funny though. I do remember criticizing Diddy and even Big when he was alive about focusing so much on cars, money, Versace this, Coogee that. And I was very much more of the native tongues, conscious hip hop.
Me too.
And I remember as much as I danced and loved the music, I remember being critical of it and about what it was doing to the art. I have a whole different appreciation for it now, especially learning about what was behind how the music was made and how they put artists on and just what, the contribution that Diddy has made to the art. And even how he came up in New York and he's throwing parties, in New York City and, coming out of Howard,
another Howard person.
Yeah, man. It's amazing, what they've accomplished. Shout out to the show Hip Hop Evolution on Netflix, which
right.
has given a lot of shine.
I've watched that so many times.
And it's kind of untold. Like not a lot of people talk about it.
I learned a lot watching it.
I learned a ton watching. I learned a ton about New Orleans and Manny Fresh.
And they did a great job.
They did a phenomenal job.
So authentic.
I didn't understand how like Manny Fresh, for example, was from this like music royalty family in New Orleans, and how he already was a name and known around town before he ever got with Cash Money. So it's like they were riding off of him more than he's riding off of them.
Like
it's great.
Fame.
So anyway, I recommend that show to people, and I still have a couple episodes to watch myself, but it's very enlightening.
Man, you ain't watched the whole thing yet, man.
I'm busy, man.
He's busy, ladies and gentlemen. He is.
It's enlightening about a lot of genres, times in hip hop, labels, groups. And even like regional, I like what they did about Detroit and other places.
Right, and they covered everybody. It was amazing. But let me just close the loop on this 96 discussion. So the records, I'm looking on Google right now.
Okay.
The records that came out in 96 were Reasonable Doubt by Jay-Z, that AT Aliens by Outkast, which is amazing.
Classic.
All Eyes on Me, the Tupac double
yes.
album. The Score by the Fugees. It was written by Nas. Iron Man by Ghostface. Hardcore by Lil' Kim. And Stakes is High by De La Soul, which is my that's my favorite album.
You're right. 96 Stakes is High is phenomenal. And finally you can get their music on streaming services. Right. For just years you couldn't get it. And it was so frustrating. A couple months ago. Right. And this dude Dave had to die, unfortunately. Plug 2, rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
But I'm very happy that their music is now available. Stakes is High is also my favorite De La album.
And apparently in the same year, Tribe released Beats, Rhymes, and Life, which I thought that was later. I thought it was
the same year as Midnight Marauder?
No. Midnight Marauder is 94, I believe.
Got it.
Beats, Rhymes, and Life is 96, which is a great album. Underrated Tribe album, in my opinion. And The Roots dropped Illadelph Half-Life, which is another great album.
Not their best, but a phenomenal album, yes.
So, I mean, I could go on. Oh, also, shout out to New Orleans. Master P released Ice Cream Man. 96. Apparently. I got a lot of respect for P.
I do too. And that evolved, because at the time I was like, look at this guy out of the South and all this gold and, yada, 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 and big braggadocious. But he's been extremely successful. He's put so many other people on, and I have a lot of respect for him as a businessman, as a label leader, and as an artist.
I know, my brother, you have to get on a plane back to New York soon, and we loved having you on. We would love to have you on again, because again, I don't have that many friends, so I need you to get my podcast rolling.
You got plenty of friends, brother.
But no, seriously, like, this has been a really great conversation. We could talk like hours more.
Yeah, I want to talk about so much more, but producers, all that. But,
right. But let's give me before we go.
Okay.
Because I know you literally. I'm looking at the clock. You literally have a plane to catch. Give me your top producers in the hip hop, and we can. This is the first of many conversations that we'll have on this podcast, because you are one of the few experts in the field.
DJ Premier.
Yes.
Pete Rock.
Yes.
It's hard to do top 5. I might have to do top 10.
You can just give me your favorite. You don't have to even put a number on.
Kanye, Just Blaze.
I don't Just Blaze in my top 5 or 10. But
I will put you on it. Like, he's got a catalog.
Yeah, but maybe he's had hits that I don't know about. Maybe
Timbaland.
Interesting. Surprised to hear you say that.
No, Timbo's got some bangers, kid.
Seems a little bit mainstream for you.
But he's done a lot of stuff that people don't even know about. Alchemist, yes, agreed. He was lesser known to some folks. Jay Dilla.
I was about to say, where's Dilla?
Jay Dilla. I'm sorry, he should have been in there earlier. Right. And we did the DC Loves Dilla concert.
DC Loves Dilla concert at Howard Theater.
Ninth Wonder.
Yeah.
Diamond D.
Apparently we have the same musical taste.
I'll throw out Diamond D as well, which doesn't get enough.
Right,
Bronx
Diamond D,
underground
old school, real New York. That's real. I had to learn about that later in life.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's real New York.
So, and so many more I could say, but those are in my top list.
No, I agree wholeheartedly, 100%. Especially with Premier, Ninth Wonder. Anytime these guys are, and again, this is something that we refer to in the podcast, and I've talked about, and I will always talk about, is pulling from soul music, from our parents' music, from that generation, 1960s, 1970s, which is, in my opinion, the best period for music, for Black music.
I agree.
And hip hop grew directly out of that. Literally grew directly out of that.
That's how you had DJ Kool Herc starting in 1973, 1520 Cedric, Boulevard, Bronx, New York.
Yeah.
basically breaking records from those eras, from the 60s
Right.
and 70s, and creating the art of hip hop.
Creating hip hop and those records, man. I mean, we're so lucky to have the parents that we had listen to the music. I shout out my mom, who really is the one who put me on to a lot of the music that I would never have been exposed to. And then, the next generation was mine, was hip hop.
That's right.
I don't even think I realized at the time how much it drew, because as you know, I am a retired DJ.
That's right.
I learned later on in life, like, wait a minute, this is who made this song, and that's where they get this beat from.
Yep.
So, yeah.
We should say, as we're talking about the origins of hip hop, happy 50th anniversary.
Happy 50th
to
anniversary.
hip hop, which is crazy.
Wow.
It's crazy, and I've been around for 45 of those years, so I feel blessed. I'm a little older than you, I know.
But you think about how much it's grown in the mainstream. I remember even growing up in New York, like there were no stations that were totally hip hop until I was out of high school, I think.
Wow, man.
And you think about that, it's like it's now
crazy.
such a major part of
Right.
American culture, but it was such a outside thing where it was banned from TV and the radio airways and all that, and it was never seen as something that could be commercially successful. And now it's just become this,
Right, and I have my thoughts about that too.
Yeah, yeah. The commercial success has certainly come at a cost.
Right, but I'm not gonna stop the progress of the music, because that's just the evolution. That's what's supposed to happen, I guess. So as long as people respect the art and love the art and cherish it for what it's worth, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, agreed.
But I'm still an old guy. Get off my lawn.
Yeah, I definitely like my godchildren, my nephews, the music they play now. I'm like, what is this garbage?
Right.
Like, what are y'all listening to? And that's what my parents used to do with us.
I think we should say that for the next episode, because that's gonna be. We might not get that many likes on.
You're right.
On
You're
that,
right.
well, let's keep it.
Well, I didn't name any names.
Right.
But.
Oh, I have lots of names to name. I'll keep it to myself for now. All right, brother. Well, man, it's been wonderful having you on. Really, truly appreciate you coming by. Hope to see you soon, and hope to see you back here sooner.
Yes, sir. My
All
pleasure.
right.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, man.
Love that you're doing
Love
this.
you,
Yes,
bro.
sir.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour. Make sure you listen to part 1 of the interview and catch up on all past episodes by subscribing to the podcast, which is available everywhere, including Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. New episodes are released on the 12th of each month. And if you'd like to see the video version of an interview, that can be found on my YouTube page at the Lawyers Hip Hop Happy Hour. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you on the B-side.